Hello, everybody. Welcome to Zenny 62 Sunday night. And I have some really incredible news to report for those who have invested in Zenny 62, even plan to invest in Zenny 62, uh, which consists more than this YouTube channel. It consists of Zenny62blog.com, Oakland News Online, our newest blog, oaklandnewsnow.com. Because of the success of oaklandnewsnow.com, Zenny62 Media has doubled in size. Doubled. Hey Hector, how you doing? And because of that, I've sent out a spreadsheet explaining where the estimated value is, which is always tricky, of course, But what I've done is, for those of you who are not familiar with, how this works, last year I instituted a program based on the fact that you can, they say donate. And like, for example, if you like what someone's content is, you put money into it, right? So I thought, when people start businesses, they take on what are called angel investors. And an angel investor is someone who will give you money to help you either get your business started or established. That is, the exchange is always shares. So I thought, what about if I gave micro shares? And that idea actually worked. It took off and it helped really in a position where it was needed. But I thought, since my intent is to make this a corporation, it is a corporation listed in Atlanta, although I left it in limbo until I got the proper elements in place, and I'm almost there. But I left it in limbo, and one of the elements was this. But uh, what I always wanted to have this done was either acquired or flipped, okay? And that means that those persons who invested in it would be eligible to get whatever their increased value of their shares was. So you could see a scenario where someone put in $2 and got back 200, or $80 and got back 800 or more than that. And I'm not saying that's a promise, but I'm saying that's the intent. And so you can't make something an intent until, I mean, if you take your eye off the ball, or if you adopt the idea of others. Hey, cowboy, how you doing? If you adopt the idea of others that, well, this is a little group and I don't want to be involved in all this. If you're starting a business and you succumb to the negative feelings and insecurities of others, your business will not succeed. You have to stay on a structure and stay on a formula, and that's precisely what I'm doing. I know I've been late getting out shares, but then of course the investments have slowed down. But the bottom line is you all have your updates, and I'm really proud to say that we're headed in the right direction. You can consider this sort of a public stock report in a sense, right? But I'm really happy with this approach, and I think that it's a lot more valuable than the standard you're just putting money into something or getting a t-shirt or something like that, okay? These shares are not sellable at this point yet, but the intent is to put them in a position where they could be, or if this is acquired, then that exchange can happen. But I want to emphasize that this is not a public stock exchange. I don't want someone making that mistake. That's not the idea. But again, if you start your own startup, the common process is for you, and any venture capitalists will tell you this, is for you to get money from friends and family and angel investors, and to set aside 30% of your stock is unallocated. Hey John, how are you doing? This is my this is my second company of this type, my fourth overall. But the whole point is that when any startup, you exchange what those persons put in monetarily for shares. That's common. That's all this is. But it doesn't mean it's on a public stock exchange. However, it does mean that you intend to compensate those folks for whatever money they put in. Commonly, the persons are compensated for putting in, say, $10,000, $25,000, and if the company's acquired, they get whatever their value of their shares is. That's the way that works. This is the same thing. It doesn't matter if the numbers are smaller. It's the same thing. So with that, for those who are here, I know John Marks isn't here yet, or Barry Lee, but they'll all be around. And that was the intent. So I'm really happy to say that Zinni 62 has doubled in value, and at this point, and I'm really jazzed about it. And again, it couldn't happen without the development of Oakland News Now and how well that's went. Now, I'll shift gears and we'll talk about the Raiders. I wrote a post. Oh, by the way, this is a double shares night. I wrote a post on Oakland News Now that talked about, basically it started with a Las Vegas Review-Journal article that was brought to my attention on Twitter. And it went basically like this. It said that the Raiders Stadium was 15% complete. And so I thought, let's figure that out. So to make a long story short, I did the math and determined that if you took the 15% completion period point at which we were this weekend, all right, and go back, let's say today, the 8th, right, and then go back to groundbreaking, that's 233 days. So then I took 233, 15%, 233 divided by 15% gives you, hey, Malcolm, how you doing? Just over 1,500 days, 1,550 days, I believe. But then I had to subtract the 233, and that came down to, 1,320 days plus. So what does that extrapolate out to from this point? The date is February, according to the date calculator, it's February 17th, 2022. That's right, February 17th, 2022, okay? And so I thought, wow, that far out? And yeah, that far out. So so then I thought about it. Well, what if we moved the number back a bit, right? Maybe we moved it back 4 months. Hey, Fred, how you doing? And I said, what if we moved it back 4 months, okay? So if we move it back 4 months, then it still comes to 2021. Basically, a year. If you moved it back a year, right, it would still be February 2021. So this all comes from the Review Journal article, and also the comments that Don Webb made, who is the head of stadium construction. And Mr. Webb said, and I quote, he said that the great thing about Las Vegas construction workers is that their enthusiasm and attention to detail has allowed a schedule which would take a 4-year stadium and make sure that it was built in 3 years, okay? Now, if you measure that from the groundbreaking, you come to this conclusion. The groundbreaking occurred when 91.6% of last year was done. That means 2018 is the first full year of construction for the stadium. 3 years takes you into what year? 2021, not 2020, 2021. All right? This all comes from what Mr. Webb said. Something else, too. What's interesting about this is that the number of people that are out there is said to be at 500. Then it was 600. Now it's less than 500. Something is interesting there. But the other issue is that when the date that the stadium was going to be completed was first announced, it was June of 2020. And then we were presented with a chart, which I've shown on this show before, that presented a 3-month move-in period. Oh, hi, Fred. Didn't know if I said hello or not. A 3-month move-in period, okay? 3 months, which would take us to June, July, August. Boom, right? Well, the stadium construction documents at the Las Vegas website, right, have it at August now as the completion month. But you still have to tack on the 3-month move-in date. That takes us to October. So all signs push toward 2021 for the stadium. And this is the biggest sign yet that 2020 is not even going to happen, all right, at all. At all. Jacob P. says the Raiders are still going to go bankrupt. Crawford says February 22, wrong. And I'll say one thing as far as that. It's of course, what I expect to happen is as the ranks of labor ramp up, I expect that date to move back. But I don't expect it to move back a full year and a half. Okay. That's not going to happen. It will definitely move back, and it'll move back, I think, more appropriately somewhere in 2021. But the question is, all right, the question is, beyond that, first of all, Don Webb is right. It takes 3 years to build a stadium. You can't do it in 2. So everyone is asking for the impossible. And what the overall problem is here is that, and I'll just be very blunt, a lot of people here don't sit down and actually put pen to paper and do math. And I'm not saying you can't, all right? It's just a matter, I don't know what's going on in society, but I'm not going to wax and say, oh, the past days are better and all that. My point is that it's just where people just don't say, they don't get into technical discussions. It's always discussions that degenerate into, if you disagree with someone, it degenerates into name calling, and it shouldn't do that. And we got that way because of the second screen and this idea, I call it the black box mentality. That is, you're talking in a black box, you're not getting anything we want back, and so you get frustrated, okay? That's got to change. That's why I really insist on video, and I insist on, I love face-to-face contact, but as opposed to texting and everything else, which people do via Facebook. But my point is that psychologically, it's caused a country of people who do not understand how to effectively solve disagreements or to effectively debate about ideas. So that's why I always challenge people to say, hey, look, if you have a different point of view, express it numerically. Show that you've, done the math. Like someone, they used to, in the early days of this, people used to just throw up the whole point about the revenues, right? But they would never put out the expenses. All right? Do the math. I've done the math. I'm delighted to have that conversation, okay? Miss Zeitgeist, as I wanted to ask you, do you think the steel and aluminum tariffs will make the Raiders stadium costs go up? I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't, and that's thank you, Ms. Zeitgeist. I didn't hint at that. I didn't get into that in my article on purpose because I felt it deserved another article unto itself, right? But the fact is that the Las Vegas Review-Journal article in Webb's comments indicated that there would be an uptick. He said a little bit. In fact, let me go and get the article itself, which I referred to here, okay? And I linked to, and I'll read the quote that comes from Mr. Webb, and I'm getting that right now, and I'm clicking on the Review-Journal, and Rick Velota's entitled article. Don't know if you remember, he was a guest on here. One of my more fun conversations Great guy. Great guy. Anyway, let's see here. I'm trying to scroll down here, and the Review Journal has this page that is laden with JavaScript, so it's not loading as fast as I want to, but hold on, I would like for it to do. So hold on, bear with me one moment, please. It's still loading. Boy, if this were on GT Metrics, which is a kind of website that estimates page speed, this would get an F. Oh my God, this thing is just slow. Hey, by the way, the temperature in Las Vegas right now is 101 degrees. Okay. No details on PSLs. I'm reading this. And the public is pitching in $750 million. You know that? Okay. All right. Well, as far as the steel, and I want to talk about that in a second. He says nearly 500 construction workers, right? And oh, by the way, I'll come back to that, all right? Webb said steel and aluminum tariffs ordered by President Donald Trump would have a minimal impact on the project's cost because most of the structural steel was ordered well before the tariffs announcements. Webb said there could be some minor price fluctuations for steel and aluminum products subcontractors use. So basically, he's opened the door right there. There's going to be an upward impact. Now, minimal is in the eye of the beholder. What's minimal to him? What's minimal to him may be big to us. Maybe what's minimal to him may be large to, maybe small to me. It might be big to you. But he opened the door. Don Webb has a way of doing it. It's the second time he's done that. The first time was when he made that comment about the fan base and the Raiders basically wanting to go a different direction. Remember that? He said that on September 21st of last year. He said he wanted to go in a different direction, okay? Hey, Fred, if you're going to be in Vegas next week, go by the stadium site, take a video. Show us what's going on. Be fun. Now, so anyway, that's what he said. There will be an impact. The question is how much, and that's not known from this. Okay, so now Jonna says, "What do you see as the biggest stumbling block that could delay stadium opening?" The biggest, there are two: money and weather. For example, let's take money. We don't know at all what the status is of the Bank of America loan. All we know is that of the total $2 billion cost, all we know is that just $547 million or so, just a little bit over that, has been budgeted for this year from the Stadium Authority. That's it. We don't know anything about the Bank of America loan. Nothing. Everyone's been silent. There has been no movement on sponsorships, and that's in large part due to the fact that the Raiders have not secured a Super Bowl for the stadium. Which really, if you have a Super Bowl and you know the Super Bowl is going to come in, it drives up what you can ask for in terms of sponsorships by a lot. That's not happening. So there are more questions to be answered. And of course, there are the other questions like parking. Where is the parking going to be? How much is it going to cost? Transportation improvements. If you're not going to do a high occupancy vehicle lane, you're going to do public, fine, but what does that cost? Okay? So there are questions regarding drainage. What's the full drainage picture look like? We don't know the answer to that. Will the stadium have to be upgraded for any seismic concerns because it's 1 block away from an active fault? You can't ignore that. You would be stupid to do so. The Los Angeles stadium had to go through, I think, what, another $1 billion worth of construction upgrades because it wasn't properly designed originally for an earthquake of large scale. I'm not kidding you, folks. Building a stadium, an NFL stadium in particular, is no small potatoes, all right? So, we have Fred. The monorail is being extended to Mandalay Bay. That was approved some time ago. However, but it's still Mandalay Bay. It's got to walk across there. That's correct. Kevin KD says parking, drainage, Super Bowl bank loan, naming rights, upgrades. I'm sure they will magically figure it out. Woo! Oh boy. And Cowboy Wrestler says if Mark Davis was a business savvy person, he would have gotten a deal done in the Bay Area. Since he isn't, he went through a deal which has a possibility of financially ruining him. That is true. That is very true. Malcontent says, I still think the Raiders could run into underwriting problems with a Bank of America loan. Their financial position is weak. And that's my concern as well, Malcontent. Kevin KD says, I really, really think they should have kept him in it explicitly, talking about Adelson, because Kevin KD said, Cowboy Wrestler, I really think that the NFL fudged it bad by not wanting Adelson as an owner. I completely agree. I mean, I'll tell you, once I found out originally that Adelson was the owner, I thought, you know what, done deal, forget it. It's, we've got no chance. Nothing's happening other than the fact that he's got a lot of money. It's a rounding error for him, and he's going to make sure it's paid for. And then things started to unravel. Okay, it's like, all right, oh no. But there's some issues back there that I would like to know more about. I'll get to those in a second. Kevin KD says, and given his ownership and none of these problems would come up. And another thing is that once he's building a sphere, has hurt Davis, or will hurt Davis. Bob Iman says, maybe the B of A loan gets bad enough it could force Davis to sell the Raiders. That also could happen. MM Forever says, where do you think the Raiders will play once the lease is up for the next 2 or 3 years? Coliseum. It's too expensive for them to go anyplace else. They're not playing with a large piggy bank. It just, okay. It might seem large to you and I, but that's the revenue side. The expense side, you got to deal with that too. Ms. Zeitgeist says, funny how Adelson helped Trump win, and Trump is making the stadium costs go up. Yeah, how about that? I think Donald has no thought about that. He just is, Donald's being Donald. Bob Iman says, I think the Raiders could have a play in Levi's for 2 to 3 years. But see, here's Rob. I'm glad you said that, because here's what happens if they do, all right? And that is that, do you know what the 49ers pay in rent annually at Levi? It's $24 million. $24 million. So the question is, if they're going to pay $24 million, they're asking, let's say the 49ers, Jed York asked for 50% of that from the Raiders, that's $12 million. That's still more, substantially more than the Raiders have ever spent at the Coliseum. So why would the Raiders just want to jump over to Levi Stadium because it's there? You have to pay greater rent. Jed is not going to let them pay what they're paying right now, which is $3.5 billion at Levi. He's not going to let them get away with $6 million over there either. He'll go to half, maybe over that. Half is $12 million. That's nosebleed for the Raiders. So for them to make that move out of what? Spite? When they can actually do a deal in Oakland, maybe it increases. But even the highest rate at which the rent increases for 2020 is still lower than what they would pay at Levi. So it just doesn't make any sense at all. All right? At all. So Fred Walker says Levi will cost them $14 million. Thanks. See Fred fill that in. Thanks, Fred. Timely addition, Fred. Hey, man, that's pretty good. Batter up. I like that. And so we got, oops, excuse me. What did I just do here? Oops. Oh, sorry about that. My screen automatically refreshed on me. Interestingly. Let me go up here. Let's see here. Fred says on the Niners lease, it says the second team will make Niners pay $14 million. Well, actually, yeah. So that's still greater. Their payment right now is 24 million. So I'm glad that's a good find. Thank you very much for that information, Fred. But that just buttresses my point. That 14 million is 4 million greater. Well, that's going to come down to 4 million greater than the greatest the Raiders will pay at the Coliseum. Although I believe that number at 10 million is supposed to come down by another 2. All right. So all right. So yeah, it's 50. It is. I know. Understand. I understand it's 50%, Fred. I know that. But again, my point is that that's too much for the Raiders. Plus, they would have to pay that twice, not just 1 year, 2 years. Okay. So you have to pay it 28 million total for 2 years versus 6 million versus at best, at the most, maybe 16 million total for 2 years. More likely 13 million total for 2 years, somewhere in there. And maybe a little less than that, because there are people on the Coliseum JPA who don't want to gouge the Raiders. It's a 50-50 split between those who do and those who don't. All right. So we get the other comments. Let's see here. Got that one, 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 and that one. Kevin KD says he knows that Davis needs events to get a sponsorship deal, so he wants him to sink in Vegas after betraying him. That could very well be. Kevin KD says the Coliseum until 2022 makes the most sense. It really does. Cowboy Wrestler says Rob Iman, but does red seats. Fred Walker says when we were talking about the 14 million. Joseph Bensman, how you doing? Joseph says that's because the only thing Trump is good at is taking care of number one, Donald Trump. Too bad. As a country, we didn't know that 2 years ago. Plenty of time to learn now for the slow learners. Kevin KD says the only way that they go to Levi's if they somehow try to abandon the Las Vegas Stadium out of the blue. Another great point. In fact, that's a fantastically great point. But even then, if they did that, I mean, look at the Raiders are not paying any rent at Las Vegas Stadium versus paying rent at Levi. Why would you go from a situation where you're not paying rent in Las Vegas? The loan was converted to, rent. So technically, they would say, no, we're paying rent. It's the Bank of America loan. But the reality is that's a loan, okay? That's the loan. So, and even then, that amount that they would be paying is less on an annual basis than the rent would be at Levi Stadium. Ooh, all right. So, pretty certain that is, yeah, because it's a 30, 20 year. No, let me recalculate that, because it's 800, because the loan would be $850 million. But if what we're talking about basically here is if it's 850 million over a 10-year period, a 20-year period, excuse me, and that's not, I believe it's 30 years. I have to go back and take a look at that one. I might just do some math while I'm sitting here. But at any rate, I want to make rest of your comments here. Rob Iman says, Oakland City Council plays hardball with the Raiders. Well, two things there. It'll be the JPA playing hardball with them. The council only comes in a matter of the lawsuit issue. John Akala says, Raiders will play in Oakland until they move, period. Correct. Fred Walker says on the Niners lease, it says second team will make Niners pay $14 million, half. Kevin KD says John, yep. Eamon Forever says, what if Oakland says no, though? Where would they go, in my opinion? My opinion, if they said no, if Oakland said no, well, the other place they would have to go to is San Diego, because San Diego would be less expensive than Levi. And so that's the other possibility. In fact, that's actually financially a better position than Levi would be. The trouble is you'd have the transportation issue with headquarters. So there are some logistical headaches that come with that you would have not to deal with in the Bay Area if you were at Levi Stadium. But having said all that, Oakland's not going to say no. It's the JPA. The JPA has made the offer to the Raiders. The only way the JPA might say no is if the Raiders made some type of brand new counter after negotiating for over 2 months on this deal to come up with something that deliberately makes them say no. And I can't imagine that happening. The JPA too much wants the money. The parking issue is really unresolved. So it would be a matter of letting the Raiders walk away with some unresolved issues. So I can't see that happening at all. And Malcolmson says, didn't Jed York's group build that stadium? If so, then he's charging himself $24 million a year. Well, yes, that's true. Rob Iman says Santa Clara. Well, actually, it's rent to the stadium authority, but they don't own the stadium authority. The public does. All right. Rob Iman says Santa Clara passed a ballot measure to get the stadium built. Right, and that's where that rent comes in. Cowboy Wrestler says, Z, from what I understand, this Santa Clara voters voted for a measure that created authority, right? That I just said that they received the loans to build the stadium. You mean to tell me that Davis couldn't get that done with East Bay? Oh, okay, I won't tell you. Look, that deal could have been done. And not only that, and this is where a lot of people, including myself, pointed at the city of Oakland, but I also have to point a finger at Ronnie Lott. Because Ronnie, I will never forget this. Ronnie, in an email exchange with me, I said to him, it was a Friday night, and I said, why don't you give them the land? And he wrote back, are you crazy? And I said, no. Offer them the land for $150 million, okay, not $100 million, $150 million, and arrange a deal where you get back up to that amount over a period of years. So, and then out of development fees. So no, I'm not crazy. And I'm disappointed that he took that idea, but hey, that's his right? So, but imagine if he had thought that way. Imagine if Ronnie had said, you know what, Zinni, that's crazy enough for me to want to try. I'll do it. Okay? The Raiders may very well be in Oakland. So, Cowboy Wrestler says East Bay City. Rob Iman says, with the A's starting bringing a winning product to Oakland, the new ballpark could get some momentum. Yes. Fred Walker says Stanford or Cal? Cal. Go Bears. Go Natalie Coughlin. Coughlin, excuse me. GT Taylor says the B of A loan seems fishy. Rob Iman says it's not fishy. I mean, it's actually, it's a deal, all right? But what is problematic about it is that the Raiders are not yet, I'm giving them a chance, they're not yet producing those sponsorship announcements that you want to see that says, hey, you know what? This thing, cha-ching, 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 okay? Now, potentially, it should be that cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. What's bothering me is the Raiders are behind schedule on this, and it's really bothering me the Raiders do not have a Super Bowl nailed down. That is a gigantic issue. I don't care what anyone tells you. I don't care to what degree a great smiley face is put on that situation. Folks, that's a problem. Trying to negotiate with a potential sponsor without having a Super Bowl in hand and being only one of 2 NFL organizations to have the distinction of not having a Super Bowl awarded to you for a new stadium yet, the other was Indianapolis, that's a problem. I don't care what anybody tells you. That impacts your rights fees. It really does. So it really does. And Rob Iman says SDCCU Stadium is heading for the wrecking ball really soon in San Diego. Kevin KD says he's talking about interesting. Kevin KD says I don't think that the Coliseum JPA will boot the Raiders out. If the Raiders turned around and wanted to stay for the next 500 years in Oakland, the JPA would say yes. I'll amend that, Kevin, KD. The JPA would figure out a way to say yes. Absolutely. Fred Walker says, how much is rent JPA want to charge Raiders? It goes like this, Fred. And this is as much as I can explain. It's 3.5 million this year. That's up from 925,000 the year before, which was 2016. That's 2017, excuse me. And as I understand it, although I haven't seen the proposal that's been sent to the Raiders yet, that proposal includes a rent level that's roughly a doubling for 2019. And at first it was supposed to be a doubling for 2020, but that scale was amended to where the top end at one point was 10 million, but I believe they come down a little bit off that. How much that is, I don't know. But basically it's a scale that goes up like this, Fred, like that. So 3.5 million this year, about 6 million the next year. The Coliseum, as I understand it, is slated to come out ahead by $3 to $4 million. Now, that is a far cry from the situations of the past where the Coliseum at one point didn't even know whether or not the Raiders had paid them rent. I kid you not, okay? I kid you not. That was the situation prior to the arrival of Scott McKibben. So Scott's, done a fantastic job of running the Coliseum. And Kevin KD says $28 million a year, 30 years, not counting interest. Talking about the Bank of America loan. Thank you. Hey, interest, Kevin KD, thank you for doing that. Interest, Kevin KD, is LIBOR. That was, last time I checked, that was 4.14%. I'll double check and see what that is later, unless you have the chance to do that. LIBOR is London Interbank Rate, okay? And so Corey Brown says, start building our own non-viable planned stadium for the Raiders and the NFL to be forced to watch so the world can see we had a plan and a real owner can take notice. I did a plan. I did one. Go to Google and just type Oakland Coliseum reboot. Number one there. Very proud of that. Ms. Zeitgeist writes, it seems to me Mark Davis is relying on Southern California fans making a trip to Las Vegas, but wasn't the main reason they came back to Oakland because they couldn't sell tickets in LA? Well, it was because they couldn't win, and also the LA Coliseum wasn't following through our obligations to build luxury boxes there and upgrade the stadium as per agreement. Las Vegas is an entirely different story. And so, entirely different. Tom Caller, hey Tom, how you doing? Tom says, Raiders don't have enough money to play anywhere but Oakland. It's not just the rent, it's also the cost for the move, yes. And not only that, the Raiders have a sunk cost in Las Vegas. Let's not discount that. And it keeps going up. And so Kevin KD says, Ms. Zeitgeist, exactly. The same SoCal that has two teams now? Really? And Malcolm Chen says, Ms. Zeitgeist, ding. And Cowboy Wrestler writes, from what I understand, the NFL never wanted to lose San Diego as a market. I personally don't think the NFL wants three teams in SoCal. I don't think so either. But they're stuck. Kevin KD says $28 million a year. Man, oh man, that's double Levi's rent. They really need events then. Yeah, they do, and that's why. Oh, by the way, when you said $28 million a year, did you say how many years you're pointing that out to? Because when I did it, you said 30 years. Okay, yeah, that's right. It's a chunk. It's a chunk of change. And that's what they're saying their rent is. So basically, now that I think about it, you know what? It would be a better deal if they actually stayed at Levi and paid $14 million a year versus that. So, I'm completely wrong there, okay? Math-wise, I'm wrong. It would be more economical for them to be at Levi at $14 million than in Las Vegas at $28 million, provided they are guaranteed making enough revenue at Levi. That's the other wild card, okay? That's the other wild card. Would the Bay Area market absorb the Raiders at Levi and allow them to generate enough money to pay $14 million? That, ooh boy. And that's that needs to be calculated with consideration for absorption rates, like likelihood of purchase of luxury boxes, yada, 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 down there. That's an interesting wild card. An interesting one. Personally, I think the Raiders are better off dealing with the Coliseum. And then not only that, if they want, if for whatever, if Las Vegas doesn't work, why can't the Raiders simply say to the NFL, hey, you know what? Let's do our G3 loan over at Oakland Coliseum, and we'll upgrade the facility. You know, keep some of the old, build in more of the new, and make it something uniquely us. That's just too logical. But and you know, and I would have to. I'll say this though. I've said it once. I'll say it again. Las Vegas not having a large event center until this dome is a game-changing issue, but it's the expense that's the at hand here. It's the expense problem versus revenue. Now, Cabarrus says, well, who remembers Irwindale fiasco? I do. G.D. Taylor writes, Kevin KD, if Mark Davis puts more than $200 million in that stadium, I'd be shocked. And then we have Kevin KD says, G. Taylor, that's what Adelson's donation was for, and now he's burned that bridge. Theoretically, look, if Adelson was really pissed off, the Raiders will not be there. They're there for a reason. And they're there because of the whole visitor issue and its negative impact on the Las Vegas casino industry and Las Vegas economy. So believe me, Adelson's got another thought there. And it may very well lead eventually to his family owning the Raiders. I haven't given up on that idea. 30 years, okay. Ms. Zeitgeist says, there's a site that shows the NFL home game fan attendance year by year. In 1993, when the Raiders were in Los Angeles, they were 23rd in fan attendance, and back then there were only 28 teams. Yeah, the Raiders, look, the Raiders' real problem is their poor marketing has not made them one of the more popular teams in the NFL by sales. Mr. Davis always felt that winning on the field covered all of that. So what happens when you don't win? The 49ers, by a measure of merchandise sales, believe it or not, are more popular than the Raiders. That's why you see the NFL pumping the Raiders and Derek Carr and everybody else. All right? And so, Unknown Raider guy says, drove by the stadium yesterday on my way to work. Progress looking good. Bob Ivan says, if the Chargers were to return to San Diego, the Spanos family would have to sell the team. Kevin Cady says, and the hilarious thing is that the Leafs and the Raptors stadium recently just acquired an $800 million naming rights deal from a large bank. The Raiders have way more cachet than the Leafs and the Raptors. Are you freaking kidding me? How did I miss that? Let me look this up. The Raptors, I'm typing Raptors naming rights deal. Raptors naming rights. Okay. A record naming rights deal, bank on it. That was Sports Business Daily. News. Goodbye ACC, hello Scotiabank. Yep. Holy freaking dang. Woo boy, Scotiabank. Toronto's business. This is the deal that would save the Raiders. Full stop. Okay? This is the deal that would save the Raiders, full stop. But the only way they could get it would be, the only way, okay? This is huge. I'm glad you pointed. Thank you very much for pointing this out to me. Thank you. This is awesome. This is a game changer. Goodbye, Air Canada Senator. Goodbye, Air Canada Center. Hello, Scotiabank Arena. The home of Toronto's Maple Leafs and Raptors has a new name, marking the end of an era for Canada's busiest sports and entertainment venue. Keep that in mind. The Scotiabank logo replaced that of Air Canada atop the Bay Street building on Canada Day. That's when the 20-year sponsorship agreement between Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, MLSC, and Scotiabank kicked in. The Canadian bank's record-setting $800 million deal, oh, chihuahua, for the naming rights of the stadium that also houses the Toronto Rock of the National Lacrosse League and serves as a premier stage for music, wow, signified a major shift in the sports marketing landscape. Oh my God. Do you know what this means? It further encapsulates the problem that MSG poses for the Raiders, because by having MSG there for music, it effectively takes away part of what the Raiders can capture from concerts at that stadium. And then, look, you've got this facility, right, that has the Toronto Rock of the National Lacrosse League as a, you have, and then you've got and not only that, you've got the Maple Leafs, okay, and you've got the Raptors. So you've got the Maple Leafs, the Raptors, two major organizations in one facility, whereas you just have the Raiders, and then you have UNLV, and that's it. That's it. So on that basis alone, the Raiders could not command an $800 million naming rights deal, you would think. All right? Because, again, they would need the Super Bowl. I'm not saying it can't be done, but this sets a level. This sets a whole new level. Reminds me of those Kevin Hart commercials. I'm on a new level. This is a new level. This is a brand new level. And it says, breaking the bank, Scotia's big bet on Toronto naming rights changes the game. Let me read this. You know, I wonder if, it says Scotia pays big for arena naming rights, but did it break the bank? And this is, brand exposure is sure to benefit, but it would take more than it for the payoff in profits. This is $100 million more the Farmers Bank was to pay, but never paid for, you know, in LA, right? And this is something else. It's going to pay a record, get this, $40 million a year for the next 20 years. That would make the Raiders sing. I mean, in Vegas, if that happened, woo! I mean, it would just be huge, okay? I mean, huge. And meanwhile, you have, in the American parlance, do you know that Netflix is bigger than basic cable now? And the NFL isn't on Netflix? Say, why do I segue to that, Zinni? Because cord cutting hurts rights fees for the NFL. That's why. And that in turn hurts how much money you can get via a naming rights deal. So this is not penciling out the way the Raiders want it to. But on the other hand, it does signal a mark of where the Raiders could be. But they need another tenant other than Legacy Entertainment. Well, Legacy has to come up with a freaking huge, big freaking deal. They've got to line up. Legacy has to turn around and say, okay, we've got Taylor Swift, Celine Dion, Imagine Dragons, Lady Gaga, and Miley Cyrus, Iggy Azalea, and let's throw in Katy Perry, all lined up for the next 10 years. Something like that. Okay, that's the only way that I see the Raiders fashioning a package that would be attractive enough to equal $800 million. That's huge, man. Thank you, Kevin KD, for bringing this to my attention. And so, Ms. Zeitgeist, I got that one. And let's see here. Unknown Raider guy says, I doubt the Chargers are coming back. Got that one. Corey Brown says, if you include the Cards, there will be 4 NFL teams within a short distance of the Raiders when the Raiders leave. Kevin KD says, Rob Iman, I agree. And he says, if Las Vegas doesn't work, when Las Vegas doesn't work, Las Vegas technically isn't working right now. Just being honest. And we've got Kevin KD says, Joseph Bisman, Toronto, they never win in the clutch. And Ms. Like Guy says the Leafs just got John Tavares, the most sought-after free agent. They're now the Vegas odds-on favorite to win the 2019 Stanley Cup. And then, let's see here. Ms. Zeitgeist says the Toronto Maple Leafs have one of the most, if not the most passionate fan bases I've ever seen. Kevin KD says, I saw the Raps and the Leafs news from the text that a friend sent to me. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you. And he says, hey, Hennessy says, when they build it, they won't come. And Kevin KD also points out that the 49ers have never had anything like the Raider Black Hole. And Ms. Zeitgeist says, Al Davis was a great football mind, but a terrible business mind. Kevin KD says, but Adelson is basically keeping the Raiders in town on a string. That's a double entendre. Their success will partially hinges on his mercy toward them. That is very true, Kevin. Kevin's on it tonight, man. Kevin gets the inaugural Zinster Award, whatever that consists of, and I'll figure that out later. Malcolmton says, Z, Google this. Monsoon season begins in Southern Nevada, posted June 7th. Yeah, I saw that. I mean, it's starting right now. I'll Google that right now. Hold on. Monsoon season begins in Southern Nevada. Uh-oh. That's a huge problem. That is a huge problem. That is here. Yep. That was posted 1 day ago. Monsoon season begins. So Fred, when you're there during monsoon season, please make a video for us. Ooh boy. And there is, hey, it's monsoon season in Southern Nevada, and it's best to be prepared for the worst. July 1st was the first official day of monsoon season. This weekend, the Las Vegas Valley has a chance to get its first taste of that monsoon moisture. So, did that happen today? Let's see, Las Vegas. I'll check that with Las Vegas weather. Or would someone check that while I'm reading the comments? Because I don't want to get too far behind in reading your comments. So I'm going back to the comments because I know they're piling up fast. And so we've got, and got that one, got that one, got that one, got that one, got that one. Joseph Bisman says, oh, Cowboy Wrestler asks, do you think a company in Vegas buys the naming rights for the stadium? I think that they're talking with a number of people, but if I were placed in the position of Mark Bedane and I needed to work a naming rights deal, I would work heaven and earth to get into a position where I have some assurances from the NFL that I'm going to get a Super Bowl. And then you need that letter of intent, something, to work with a sponsor. You can't do it on the come. The sponsors, if the sponsor's smart or is going to want to see something more than just a word. Now, having said that, you know, it's also going to depend on the kind of relationships they have with sponsors or relationships they have with people who can get them those kind of deals, the Raiders. What the Raiders are banking on is Las Vegas international cachet. And if I'm Mark Bedane, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm looking at something hybrid. I'm looking at the possibility of a foreign naming rights deal with a company that is international, that wants a large presence in the American market, that speaks to its international global influence. Okay, that's what I would try to go after. I would really swing for the fences on that one, because Las Vegas is truly an international city and region. It's very unique in that way. And so if you're not playing off of that, if you're not calculating from a data perspective what that equals, I think it's a mistake. I really do. And then also you have to consider the internet aspect of that as well. In other words, what the views are going to come in with respect to that, the social media impact, everything else. So if the Raiders aren't doing it that way, I think it's a mistake, to answer your question. Let's see here. And Joseph Bensman says, oh, the other problem with in Vegas directly, to answer your question again, is you have a number of casinos just coming out of bankruptcy or financially tight positions. Not the best situation right now. Binsman says the Raiders' new stadium is going to be a dome, right? Yes. Just wondering. I would assume yes, it is. Ms. Zeitgeist, Kevin KD says to Ms. Zeitgeist, yes, but they are self-absorbed and arrogant as well. Devoted, yes, but delusional, and the rest of Canada hates them. Wow. Joseph Binsman says, yeah, Kev, but the Leafs haven't had a playmaker leader like Tavares forever. Big addition. Have to see how it plays out. Joseph Binsman says he's happy he's home too. Hey, John Marks, how you doing? Welcome. Kevin KD says, Joseph Binsman, it was a foregone conclusion that Tavares was going home. And we all say hi to John. Joseph Binsman says, and, laugh out loud, still a big pickup for the Maple Leafs. Have to see how that team gels. Cowboy Wrestler says, by the way, when is the NFL television contract up? The NFL television contract comes up 2021. All that collective bargaining, TV, it all comes together then, okay? 2021. And so John says, will the Raiders still get a naming rights deal still at Oakland for the Coliseum? Well, do you mean will there be one for the Coliseum? They're still trying that. The problem with landing a naming rights deal in Oakland the way it's being done is the extremely short lease terms and the fact that they're not slicing and dicing the naming. In other words, rather than just having one big naming rights deal, you name this gate A, gate over here, gate over there. The Coliseum gates need to be named. They need to literally take the Coliseum and divide it into a grid system, okay? And then allow people to basically buy different parts of that and name it that way. And I think that would really go a long way towards solving a lot of the naming rights issues and problems. Bringing them down to bite-sized levels, if you will. All right. So John Mark says so they won't finish in 2020. Unknown Raider guy, but if they finish, I just might have the Raiders sponsor my internet radio station in Las Vegas. Kevin KD says I can't believe that the Leafs and the Raps have a deal and the Raiders do not. Honestly, feel like if they stay in Oakland, they could have that kind of marketing deal. And I agree with you, but it underscores, and I'm glad you wrote that, Kevin. It underscores just how much these deals are based on relationships. In the Farmers case, with that $700 million, it came because of relationships with people at AEG, and with respect to other corporations and organizations in sports and around the country, So I don't discount the value of relationships in this, because they really are. This really is about the art of the deal. I mean, that's not a cliche, one bit. Okay, and Cowboy Wrestler says my friend who knows Vegas well says the Win should buy the naming rights. I personally think he's wrong, however. But see, given Win buying the naming rights is one thing, but the other question is what would he spend? And given that whole situation with the wife and the sexual stuff, where is that going to come into play? If Steve Wynn puts his name on the Raiders stadium, that right there devalues the Raiders' ability to gain any other decent deals with companies, because that would be a taint. It would be a taint. And then not only that, if the Raiders sign such a deal for, say, $300 million, it's worse. The Toronto deal has really put the Raiders in a bad position. They have to come up with something that's blockbuster, because they have a blockbuster public subsidy. They have a blockbuster stadium cost, Matt, that's basically surpassed only by Los Angeles, which also has to come up with an equally great naming rights deal now. Okay? The NFL, now everyone's going to be looking at the NFL and saying, hey, look, can you match that? If the NFL can't match that, I have to personally say that's embarrassing for the league. This is huge on a number of levels. I mean, it really is. So it just that's no other way to say it. I'm going to focus more on this one in subsequent shows. GT says Tennyson Stadium. John Mark says Steve Wynn will buy naming rights in Las Vegas. Yeah, but what you have to understand is not whether or not he'll buy it, but it's the question is, do you want Steve Wynn's name on your facility right now? I don't think so. I don't think so. There's nothing against Mr. Wynn. But the situation, the circumstances, the Me Too movement, are you kidding me? No way. No way. I mean, you're just throwing that out for conversation. That's one thing. But realistically, forget it. Not happening. Mm-mm. Unknown Raider guy says, John Marks, show up to a game if finish just one game. If you win, I'll show up with my cousins from Kansas, Jersey. And then, okay. And then, let's see here. John Mark says, I don't have a doubt if Zinni says they'll finish by 2021. Hey, I'm just going through the numbers, man. Malcontent says, wait a minute. I want to make sure I've got your comments here. And Kevin Katie says, Cowboy Wrestler reminds me of the fact that they did not build their stadium downtown like the recent Leafs and the Raptors. And Binsman says, boy, the players better fight tooth and nail for a better bargaining agreement next time around. I think they will. NFL players, he means. And Malcontent says, I remember when the Warriors had minor ZTE as a sponsor. Now they're sanctioned by the U.S. government. Times they are a-changing. Ain't that the truth? Jack Hammers, are you happy about the Raiders' move? Falcons says, what will Falcons' record be this year? The Falcons' record will be 10-6. Right there. There you go. Welcome, by the way. Glad to have you here, Falcon fan, 408. Thank you so much. John Mark says the Jack Hammers, no. And Falcon fan says, do you think Sarkisian will be better this year? Yes, I do. It's talking about Steve Sarkisian, the Falcons offensive coordinator. And the reason why I think he'll be better is because he's had not only a year with the players and an ability to interact with them and also analyze film, but he has a new weapon, Calvin Ridley. So John Mark says 12-4 Falcons. I still think the Falcons have to get past the Bucks. People are too focused on, Jameis Winston and off the field, and they forget that the Bucks are bringing in a better defense this year by far, at least on paper. And I think that if the Bucks defense plays anything near how they look like they should play, look out. They should be better. If they're not, Mike Smith should be fired by the middle of the season. Period. I mean, this is make or break. All right, that's it. Kevin KD says, yes, the MLSC, who owns the Leafs and the Raptors, are well connected in Toronto and can have their pick of the litter with naming rights. It's a great point. Richard Lucero, how you doing? He goes, lots of OT. Malcontent says, Jack Hammers, I don't mind them moving as long as the city of Oakland sues the team for the tens of millions of dollars they owe us. Hundreds of millions? Unknown Raider guy says, Jack Hammers, am I happy? I know, it was kind of like, whatever. Oh, boy. And so I think Jack Hammers just put that out there just to have me read that off, So there you go. I hope you're happy. GC Taylor says, Malcontent, Kevin KD says to Malcontent, I want the intellectual property. GT Taylor says, Southwest Air should sponsor the Raiders Stadium and call it Want to Get Away Stadium. The question is, would Southwest pay that kind of coin? I can see the Raiders in these naming rights meetings, which they've had, and all of a sudden this Canada deal comes up and everyone goes, oh, wait a minute. And all of a sudden it's like, well, and Bedane is probably saying, well, gee, can we I just realized I have a headache. Can we freeze our meetings for a second? Oh, boy. Kevin KD says, Colors History Championships. Cowboy Wrestler says, who bought the naming rights for LA? No one yet. Malcontent says, and Rob Iman says that he predicts the Panthers take a bit of a step back with Cam regressing. Cam Newton is not regressing under Norv Turner. Forget it. That is not happening, man. No way. Ms. Zeitgeist says, I think the Niners and the Rams will both be 12-4 this year. Whoa. John Mark says, we hate the move, Jack Hammers. And he says, and Jack Hammers asks, will you still be a Raiders fan once they move? Rob Iman thinks the Falcons will go 8-8. And Kevin KD says the players got had in the previous CBA negotiations. There's a lot of sentiment for that. Yes, that's right. John Mark says, welcome to Gotta Get Away Stadium in Las Vegas. I like that. That could turn into something. Cowboy says, Jack Hammers, no, I will not be a fan of the Raiders once they move. And Rob Iman says, Saints go up 10-6. Record. Cowboy Russia says, fan, I mean. Rob Iman says, Bucks go 6-10. Really? Bucks are going to be better. But if the Bucks go 6-10, it's sayonara to Dirk Carter. John Mark says, once they go to Vegas, I will not be a Vegas Raiders fan. Let's see here. And Unknown Raider says, John, so you hate the Raiders now? Are you going to be Niners fans after they leave? Unknown Raider, I'll tell you, I've always been a fan of both organizations, but also I cover the NFL, and even prior to covering the NFL, I've always been a fan of individual business operations people and players, like, for example, Bill Walsh or Mike Martz. You get the idea, okay? Offensive coordinator. Jack Hammer says, what do you think the Steelers' record will be? That's for the flock. I need to think more about that one. Unknown Leader says Niners. Jack Hammer says Cowboy Wrestler, will you become a 49er fan? Corey Brown likes Bunny Ranch Stadium as a naming rights agreement for the Raiders. Falcon Fan 408 says, what's going on with Julio? Julio is training. Julio is getting himself worked. You know what Julio's doing? Julio Jones is getting himself worked into a situation where he is in such great shape that he plays so well that he quite literally plays himself into a tradable commodity, into an acquirable commodity. That's what he's trying to do, okay? Because he believes that if he doesn't do that, the Falcons may very well favor Calvin Ridley over him and reduce his value when, in point of fact, he's been a great engine of production for the Falcons. I mean, when you have to drill down to maybe one or two plays out of many that a person's made over a season, that means that, you know what, you don't really have much to say, and the guy's really been invaluable to you. But a lot of people around here are saying, oh, well, he didn't make that catch in the end zone. One catch. That would have, put them in to further deeper in the playoffs. But the saying is, coaches like to say it doesn't come down to one play. Now, you and I both know that a lot of times it does, but what coaches are trying to say is you should never get yourself in a position where one play matters. You just blow them out so that, hey, you know what? It's a done deal. So we've got John Akala says, can you see the Raiders deal in Vegas totally collapsing? I can see that. I can see it totally collapsing and Sheldon Adelson picking it like that. I can see that happening. Now, I'm going to say this because I just feel this way. This is so much a part of Mark Davis' self-esteem that I would hate to see it happen. Because, again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, all right? Mark has been unfairly maligned in the media and, in a sense, implied that he's like a stupid guy, okay? And I think that's really wrong. And I understand what's driving him, and I hope that he sees better. Also, I haven't said this before, but I have to be candid with you. Mark Davis is not in the greatest health. Mark Davis is not in the greatest health, okay? That's all the details. That's all I'll say. But I'll say that, he'll be 61 up there, and he deserves to have some greener pastures. Why not? We all do. I do. We do. You do. We all should be rich. That's how I look at it. Seriously. Tom Caller says, Cowboys assist Tom Caller. Well, that's a Craig hole in Atlantic City that has a name on it. John Mark says, one losing season in Vegas equals total failure. And Jack Cameron says, more popular than the Raiders. I didn't quite understand that one. I'm going to stop at 2 o'clock, by the way, folks. And Ms. Zeitgeist asked me, I'm not going to answer that question, Ms. Zeitgeist, at all. I'm just going to leave that alone because that gets into an area I don't want to go into. Okay? Now, all right. Tom Caller says, Cowboy Wrestler, really, what is bad publicity for a stadium? Cowboy Wrestler was saying, it all depends on the Buccaneers' rebound, right? I think they lose them with Winston. I don't. People, you have to understand something. On the field, Jameis Winston has been great. His QBR has increased every single year. Jameis Winston's biggest problem is that Dirk Carter does not give him an avenue. He doesn't make him think. Okay? He doesn't give him the offense and say, you know what? I want you to be my on-the-field offensive coordinator. He doesn't give him that responsibility. You should see the clip of Carter talking to Jameis Winston. I pointed this out before, and I'll point it out again. And where he's just saying, oh, you made a bad throw. You shouldn't have thrown it, man. You were making these good throws, and that's a bad throw. That's like a fan. He's the coach. He's supposed to be going and having a detailed conversation about what key he missed in this play, what they ran that maybe they didn't expect. You see what I'm getting at? Instead of that unstructured, emotional stuff. That came from Coach Carter. I heard that and I thought, oh, really? And I personally liked the man. Met him. Even gave him a play. So I was just disappointed. Massively disappointed. All right? Well, these things are coming fast. Falcon asked, do you think Julio's being greedy due to Matt Ryan getting his contract? No. The question is, do I think Matt Ryan's being greedy for asking for that level of contract and not saying, hey, you know what, I want to split it up and help the team? Think about it. Joseph Benson says, most of Trump's AC casino is gone. The rest is due to be demolished sometime. Byman says, we'll see how Kirk Carter deals with Ryan Fitzpatrick for the first 3 games. The Bucs will be fine because their defense will come through. I really believe that. Cowboy Wrestler says, Tom Caller, my friend who lives in Vegas suggested it. I, however, think it's a bad idea if the Raiders consider it. And what is that something that, what was that? What was that? It was missed, Cowboy Wrestler. Probably missed that. What was that something? Raiders consider what? Okay, so hey, I've gotten through all of your comments. Woo! Steelers fan says, why is everyone freaking out about the Bucs? I'm not freaking out about them at all. Cowboy Wrestler says, when buying the naming rights. Oh, when buying the naming rights. I just, I can't see that happening. I can't. I mean, it's not so much a matter of when buying the naming rights. Who would be fool enough to ask for them? Stephen Wynn buying the naming rights for the Raiders would be a kiss of death for any other market or sponsorship they would want to get. The Wynn name is tainted because of the Me Too issues. That's just a fact. Okay? Sorry. Rob Iman says, Jason Licht goes with Carter if the Bucs go down in flames. But you know what, though, Rob? Jason Licht had a good draft this year. Okay? So I don't think Jason Licht gets cut like that. Gets cut with Carter, okay? I think Licht stays and Carter goes. Because he had a whale of a haul this year. Vita Vea and Rob Jones from USC at the top. Woo. No, not at all. Not at all. So 150, I'm going to stop in just about 5 minutes. And Benjamin says he thinks the Bucs will start 0-3 because the first 3 games are brutal, but it all depends on that after Winston comes back. And John Mark says we're freaking out because they're the Bucs. Steelers fan says, could the Chargers ever move back to San Diego? Could happen. But John Mark says no. Kevin KD says, I don't disagree with Mark having greener pastures, but just not like this. No, I know I don't like the way it happened, but look, it happened, okay? And it happened because Mark felt like he had to hit a home run for his dad. And again, I go back to, there are always things we don't know about, but on the surface, I think that Mark has really bent over backwards to be one of the NFL owners and to, make the necessary steps to bring the Raiders to the proper level that they need to be in terms of franchise value. There's no reason why the Raiders should not be one of the more valuable franchises in the National Football League, and that they're not should be a cause of alarm to every Raider fan around the world, especially in Oakland. All right? And as a Raider fan, when I pitched my deal to Mark Vegas, the first thing that I said to him is, I've got $2 billion for you, cash. Like I'm Mr. Money Bucks. But I designed it to basically throw off that kind of money for the Raiders. Base. Unencumbered. Bing, $2 billion, right? Boom, okay? Unencumbered, boom, all right? So, Steve Fan says, what do you think the Panthers record will be? No, I think the Panthers record will be, given the presence of, the Panthers record is going to be 12-4. I can't see, I can't see the Falcons topping the Panthers. I think the Panthers are going to be very difficult to deal with this year, more so than the last two. I could see the Panthers possibly returning to the Super Bowl, yes, in Atlanta. And I say that because of Norv Turner and DJ Moore, their new wide receiver. Because, people talk about Calvin Ridley with the Bucks, but Calvin Ridley with, the Falcons, right? But what the Bucks have is upgraded defense that arguably the Falcons don't have and the Panthers don't have, but the Panthers have Norv Turner. All right, that's how I'm looking at it. So, Cowboy says, Z, what do you think about what Trevor Podesta accomplished tonight in Vegas? Huge, amazing, tremendous. And I want to talk more about it tomorrow. The reason I say this because it's 1:53 in the morning. Rob Byman says, I think Pete Carroll retires after this season as Seattle's safe face after a really bad season. Wow. Byman says, I don't think Russell Wilson stays healthy this season with the current O-line. Hey, scheme can help that. Mark says, Pete Carroll better get an O-line to protect Russell Wilson. Benjamin says, 10-6 for the Panthers. To me, I see 12-4. Steelers fan says, Bengals record. Bengals record. Let me come back to you on that one, okay? I'm not confident in what I'm thinking. Cowboy Wrestler has Panthers at 11-5. Rob Iman says Bengals finish 4-12 and draft a quarterback next season. John Mark says Seahawks 10-6. Corey Brown says, how long will the Chargers committed to Los Angeles? For a heck of a long time, like 30 years. Cowboy Wrestler says, Travis Podesta. Rob Iman says 5-11 for Seattle. John Mark says, really, Rob Iman? No, the Chargers are part of the furniture, okay? They're not like an appendage. That has to be understood. They're not there to take up space for the Rams. They're there as a partner. So that has to be understood. So is it the Rams Stadium? Yeah. But do the Rams need the Chargers? Yeah. And this is part, and has been part, of a long-term effort the NFL embarked on to put two teams in Los Angeles. The NFL has succeeded. It's working on its Taj Mahal. And right now, they've got to come up with a naming rights agreement and a series of sponsorships that reflects that. Okay? So, John says, how about Raiders record for 2018? Say 10-6. I could see 10-6. Yeah. Iman says, Seattle's going to be rebuilding this season. John Mark says 0-16 for the Raiders. Ooh, that's nasty. Steelers fan says the Raiders should have went to LA, not the Chargers. I don't know. The Raiders should stay in Oakland, man. I'm no Raider again. Says John Marks, you just hate Mark Davis, huh? Joseph Bensman says, yeah, Legion of Boom is gone. Too bad. only Earl Thomas remains, and he probably won't be there for long. All right, folks. Oh, Malcolmton says, when should we hear about the Raiders' response to the JPA lease proposal? I'm doing digging. I'll get back to you. I know the conversations are happening right now, so I'm trying to find the stuff behind the scenes and everything else. Folks, I am shoving off, and this week, I'm going to talk Comic-Con. And hey, everybody, thank you very much for all of your responses. Oh, and by the way, again, there's an email out there. I have offered John's $80 shares to anybody who wants to get them first for free. Just simply shift those shares to you. That's it. It's a bargain. Better than a fire sale. It's not even a sale. It's just it's a sliding transfer because, hey, he's mad that he thinks I'm race baiting and all this other stuff. I don't want to be involved. And I say, hey, look, let's make it public, man. If you don't want to be involved, that's cool. But I don't want to be in a situation where, you know, Zenny 62 Media takes off, what I plan to happen happens, and then you turn around and say, hey, I invested blank, what's it worth now, pay me. I wanted to get that out of the way. So if he's in a situation where he's just doesn't care, and I just want everybody to know that. I'm like, great. Because I thought, what do I do with this? It's just this value just sitting there. Just slide it to somebody else, right? So, okay. So, John Mark says, no more talk of court injunction. John Mark says, watch horror films, keep America strong. You got it. Good night, everybody. I'll see you. Thanks a lot. And tomorrow. Yep. Good night. Good night. Night all. Good night, all. Thank you. Thank you. See you. Oh, by the way, see you. Yeah, Wimbledon. God, I forgot to talk about Serena Williams' win. Oh, how scintillating was that? Oh, by the way, 16 unreturnable serves. Think about that one. Ooh, see you guys later. All right, good night.